joined by Candace Owens. Candace, you're our newest colleague here at the Daily Wire. We're excited to have you. My first question is, I know you've only been here for a few days, but who's your favorite coworker here at the Daily Wire?
That is a really good question. I'm going to have to go ahead and say the makeup artists.
As long as you didn't say Michael Knowles or one of the other hosts, that's fine. That's what I was worried about. So you got to Tennessee. I talked to you off air last week, and you were talking about your experience driving here with a baby. I did that with 4 kids, so I know a little bit about that. You've been to Tennessee. Have you assimilated into the culture yet? I mean, the pickup truck, the cowboy boots and all that. Have you done that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was actually the second day at Tennessee. My husband was like, we're doing 2 things. We're going to the gun shop, and we're going to go buy a pair of cowboy boots. Gun shop didn't go well because we still have our DC driver's license, so you have to have a Tennessee license to buy a gun, so we still have to wait for that. But it wasn't difficult to assimilate into the culture because I think actually that was my culture. Like, I'm conservative, right? So I was actually a fish out of water living in DC. Here, I'm like, this is great. Everybody thinks like me, so it's been awesome. I'm just happy to be in the South. It feels like this is where people are sane. And I mean, I guess you can't relate because you weren't in LA, but Daily Wire was in Los Angeles, and it really is the land of the living dead when you're doing LA, New York, and DC.
Yeah. I was living in Pennsylvania. You had accused me of living in Canada, so that was, you'd spread a rumor online that I lived in Canada.
The internet spread that rumor, and I believed it.
The internet spread it because you said it. So
it was QAnon stuff. It was like Matt Walsh lives in Canada. And I fell for it. I don't know, internet's a dangerous place. To
this day, the worst insult anyone has ever leveled at me is being a Canadian. So I want to talk about your show. We'll talk about your show in a minute. But first, just to go over some of the stuff happening in the news, want to get your thoughts on a few of it. I guess we have to begin with the royal family because that's what everyone's talking about. I know you've been...
I've been very vocal.
You've been on top of it. So I have 2 questions. And the first one is a serious question because I really am hoping you can shed some light on this. Why does anyone care about these god-awful people? So we'll start with that. Why do you think people care that much?
So I have to say, I never had an appreciation for the royals, right? It's something that Americans don't really jive with. It never made sense to me. But I fell in love and married an Englishman, right? And so I kind of learned to appreciate the significance of the Queen and really understanding that there's been something in their country that has remained solid and has not changed over time. Difficult for Americans to comprehend because we don't really do tradition. We're kind of like tear it down, old building, tear it down, build something new, tear it down, build something new. So that's the reason I think that people follow the royals. Now, I don't care at all for the Harry and Meghan thing except for the political undertones of somebody saying, I'm not liked, therefore it's because I'm 25% black. Like that stuff bothers me, whether we're talking about Democrats saying it, we see that pollution all throughout Hollywood. So this Hollywood star going into a country that really sort of loves its traditions and then accusing them of being fundamentally racist, it's just like, let's keep the American BS race narrative at least within the bounds of America. Let's not extend it overseas to Europe because they have a different culture there. They've been around much longer. England never had slaves in its country. And by the way, in terms of worldwide slavery, the Englishmen were the first to abolish it. So she's sort of relying on American ignorance and the race obsession in America and extending it overseas. It's really bothersome. It's irksome.
So do you think the American media running to Meghan Markle's defense, do you think part of that is how they detest tradition in general, and so they don't like the royal family for that reason?
Yeah, I mean, think about where we are right now in America, right? That is sort of this cultural Marxist, everything that is from yesterday is wrong, it needs to be torn down. Everything about America is wrong. We got to get rid of Christopher Columbus. Dr. Seuss is racist. So we are just obsessed with thinking that everything from the past is wrong. And sure, there were elements of the past that were definitely wrong, but in many ways we've thrown out the baby with the bathwater. And England is just a different place, right? I mean, their population, there's only 3% black people in England. It's a remarkably, compared to America, a very small country. And so it just sends, it's so ignorant. It's just the height of ignorance to me to have this D-list actress that nobody knew go over there. Not her race is not discernible by the eye. If she walked in, you would never say Meghan Markle is a black woman, right? And then she says her son, who, if you've seen a picture of, and you think that he has faced anti-black racism in his life, then I'm a Nigerian prince and I have, an account that you can you can send some money into. And it's frustrating. I think we're just tired of the race narrative here in America, and it's just obnoxious that we sent this girl over here to start the same thing overseas.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that you said 25% black, right? Is that the actual?
Meghan is less than 50% black. Her mother is half black. Yes, she's less than 25% black. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had the same experience when we first started hearing about her, and we heard that this racism against a black woman. My first experience was is she a black woman?
Yeah, exactly.
So it does make it a little bit hard to believe, but I think, doesn't it tell you something about the way the victimhood hierarchy works on the left? And it's a really confusing intersectionality, as you know, is very confusing. But the reason why this woman is able to make a victim of herself, even though she's fabulously wealthy and she's in her 18,000 square foot mansion, and she's got her Netflix deals and everything, and she's sitting on a patio more expensive than my house and talking to Oprah and all that, she's still the victim,
right?
Because she's less white than the other ones,
right?
And so that it's all about the intersectionality.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's the same thing I say to my husband. So I now have a half black, half white son, and I always say to my husband, "Is he half privileged or half oppressed? Like, what is he, oppressed or privileged?" This is sort of the weird thing. And she never, throughout her life, she never presented as black. It wasn't like she was playing black characters or wanted people to identify her as black. But it became convenient for her when she realized, okay, the entire United Kingdom hates me. I'm not a very likable person, and the elements that they hated about her are the elements that I think conservatives hate about Hollywood, right? Where she just wanted to be the center of attention at all times, and she couldn't respect tradition. And then she goes around and says, okay, well, how can I make the American press love me since I've been sort of chased out of the country because no one likes me there? And the obvious thing for her was, I'm in Hollywood, so I'm going to take, the race narrative. And it's just pathetic. You're wealthy. By the way, even if you weren't, sometimes in life, people don't like you. I know. You can Google my name. You know what I'm saying? I've got tons of hit pieces against me. I've never once read those hit pieces and said, well, it's clear they don't like me because I'm black. It's sometimes people don't like you. Deal with it.
How do you think, with the victimhood hierarchy, because I'm always fascinated by this, we know that she can put herself on it for the racial issue, but I can never quite figure out on the left, who are the uber victims? Who's at the top of the hierarchy? I think it's probably LGBT, trans. Is that what it is? But it seems to change depending on who the person is.
Yeah, it's weird. So the trans stuff, what I've noticed is it does seem like, okay, they are the biggest victims, but that's actually not true because Black Americans, by and large, do not support the trans agenda. That's actually being pushed by wealthy white people. So it's very interesting to try to discern, even now when you see like a big race scandal and you'll be like, oh, this person was canceled because they were racist. Most of the time it's white people that are canceling people. It's not Black people that are up in arms. Like Black people did not go up in arms about Dr. Seuss. That was literally created by white people who are now wielding the race sword and being like, you must go. Morgan Wallen scandal. Black people were like completely out of they don't even know who Morgan Wallen is, right? I mean, so they're like, So this is actually white people being empowered and using race as a tool, and white people establishing that the trans agenda is now their new frontier of oppression. So, no, I don't think I think Black is peak victim. And if Black Americans were like, cut this out with the trans stuff, they would have to sort of cut it out. But yeah, it's interesting because the question is who's deciding on these cancellations and these victimhoods. It ends up being, if you follow it, wealthy white corporations.
And of course, you add in the political ideology part of it, because by that equation, you should be able to claim victimhood, but you can't because you're actually at the bottom.
Right.
Because even though you're a Black woman, you're conservative. So
right.
you're like, you become the uber villain.
But also what's magical about it, though, is they don't know how to defeat me, because in order to defeat me, they'd have to go against their own rules, right? So they've decided that being a Black woman, like I'm at the top of the progressive stack, right? Like Black women need to find their voices. Like Meghan in her interview, I guess, said something about like, I felt like the Little Mermaid who fell in love with the prince and lost her voice, which is just one of the most
pathetic. Did she really say that?
She actually said that.
Oh, dear
which,
Lord.
you see what I mean? Like it just makes you cringe and it makes you angry. You're just like, Hollywood, right? As you're the Little Mermaid. And it's like, no, like you found a wealthy guy that could help you climb a ladder because you were a D-list actress. The end. You won. Great. Walk away into the sunset and be happy. But yeah, it's interesting.
Don't you find that
they don't know how to attack me?
Don't you find that you get even more hate than, let's say, I would as a white man?
Oh yeah.
Because not only you're saying unpopular things, but also there's this element of you're betraying. The left thinks that that you belong to them because of your
Right.
identity.
So that they get very frustrated because it's like they assumed all of this power by creating these sort of victimhood channels. And one of those things was Black women are always victims. So when a Black woman denies being a victim and says, I don't want to take the victim card, I don't believe in the Black card, I feel remarkably privileged in this country to be an American living and breathing at this time, you are privileged. They just go, because now they don't know how to defeat me without being racist themselves, right? Because attacking a Black woman is fundamentally racist. So they just want me to go away and they don't know how to make that happen.
Now, we were talking about the trans thing a second ago. Gender, I've noticed it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like in recent months, you've been focusing especially on gender issues.
Yeah.
Going back to the infamous Harry Styles, your controversial opinion that you don't think men should wear dresses. I don't know how you could possibly say such a thing. But so there's that, and then there's the women, the men in sports and all those sorts of things. I think that the gender issues have been, I've been saying for years that this is one of the central battlefields of the culture war. It's time for conservatives to wake up to it and start engaging. This is not a sideshow. It felt for so long that conservatives said, well, this is a fad, it'll go away. It's not. So am I correct that you've been focusing on this more? And if so, why is this important, do you think?
So I actually haven't been focusing on it more. It's just that it's kind of finally come to fruition, which you predicted it, I predicted it. So 3 years ago, when I was first speaking out, I was like, watch this, because this is something that you think, it's less than 1% of the population. It's not going to ever be a thing. And I was like, I just kind of saw it kind of brewing. And I had done tons of episodes on my show, my previous shows, talking about it. When I was sitting college campuses, I was talking about it. And then it feels like sort of in the last 6 months, they sort of became really obsessed with now even calling a woman is wrong, right? Like even trying to say, all of these terms, woman X, how do you even say it? Womex, women's,
Womenix.
Womixin. Womixin. Yes, right.
I also thought it was Latinx, but I'm told that it's a Latin X.
No, let's go with Latinx,
Yeah.
right? And which is hilarious because if you ever use the word Latinx, it's the easiest way to discern that someone is not actually Latino or Latina because they'd have to do away with the entire language.
Yeah.
Everything is a gender in Spanish. La mesa, that's table. Like it's like boy or girl for everything. But yeah, so I just saw it coming and I wanted to really assert myself on that issue because it is just the greatest undoing, you get to destroy families, weaken society. You can do everything through the transgender movement that the left is really after, which is just chaos. So yeah, I just spoke out against it. And I will say this, like I said earlier, it is the one issue that Black Americans are the most uncomfortable with. And so I have not, I've seen Black Americans across both sides of the political spectrum say, okay, on this, she's 100% right, which makes sense because if you poll Black America in terms of their politics, they've never been big supporters of the LGBTQRNSET.
That's also, you don't, whatever it is, just say the whole alphabet, but you say that Black Americans don't support this, and I've heard that before, but you don't hear that voice. The voice is heard through you, but it's not. They don't have very many outlets to express that. BLM, for example, is at least before they scrubbed their page that laid out their whole agenda, the stuff about tearing down the
families.
Families. They took a lot of that stuff off, but before they took that stuff off, you read it and you thought, well, this is an LGBT group. This is not. There's very little here even about race. It's mostly about trans and. So is that? Why don't we hear that expressed more? Is it?
Yeah, I think you do. It's just not given. It's not given air. So, I definitely have heard Charlemagne the God, right, on the Breakfast Club talk about various political issues, and they will always side on the Candace is right on this one, and definitely throughout the Harry Styles thing. Actually, it was the first time Black Twitter ever came to my defense, by the way, as they call it, #Black Twitter, because, Noah Cyrus, Miley Cyrus, apparently has a little sister, and she jumped in to defend Harry Styles, and in the process called me like a nappy-headed hoe, and then it kind of went viral on Instagram, and they were all talking about the issue, saying this is just not something we accept, but the media won't cover it. So it sort of exists in this bubble on social media, whereas I know, you speak to Black Americans, they never, ever, ever have attacked me on my position on women are women and men are men. And I think that they really see that as an attack on Black men, and it's an attack on all men, what it means to be a man. And we already have so many issues when it comes to fathers in the home and what it means to be a man in Black America as is. So it's just not something that they're going to get behind. So it's a losing issue for Democrats, which is why I'm okay with them trying to force this down people's throats, because in my opinion, you start calling a Black woman's child, her son, by a female name, and you're going to wake up a sleeping giant.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a losing issue, I think, across most demographics.
Yeah.
It's just that, again, there's this. It's hard to get that voice out there,
right?
Because the media doesn't want to air that. But one other thing I want to ask you before we talk about your show on this topic, there's this Gallup poll that came out. I don't know if you saw it last week. I think it was. Talking about the rise of LGBT identification in the younger generation, Gen Z, and they're defining. I think they define that as born between 1997 and 2002 or something. So this leaves out like our kids' generation. I mean, and even other kids. But they found in the Gallup poll that something like 12% of this generation identifies as bisexual, like easily 10 times higher than other older generations. The number of transgender identifications 10 times higher. There are now more trans-identifying people in Gen Z than there are lesbians. Now, I got in some trouble on Twitter because I said that I think this is an active effort by the LGBT left to essentially recruit kids, to indoctrinate kids into their way of thinking.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
My take on that is, first and foremost, I have realized, as I said with the race issue, that a lot of the times it's not Black Americans behind it. It's not LGB behind this trans agenda. I've spoken to tons of people that are on the left, lesbian, gays, and they are uncomfortable with they don't even understand why they're being forced to pretend to defend this. I mean, LGB really has nothing to do with T.
Right.
And they've been able to amass a lot of power, push through policies. California just proposed a bill that boys and girls sections, that would make boys and girls sections in retail stores and online stores illegal, and that people that have signs that say boys section, girls section will get fined $1,000, right? You can't tell me that gays and lesbians got together and were like, this is just unbelievable. So there's something political that's pushing this, and they're hiding behind the LGB people to try to push that through, which is interesting and it's super alarming. But in regards to children identifying, which is definitely happening, they're being encouraged in the school system. So again, there's something coming down the political pipeline that's encouraging them to see. And then you have these woke parents who are like, well, this is just who my child is. And what I always say is that if you show me a trans child, it's like showing me a vegan dog. You know who's making the decisions.
Right.
It's just like, my dog's a vegan. No, your dog's not. You know what I mean? My child's trans. No, your child's not. You are, putting this lifestyle upon the child because you just don't think. I grew up. I've been a kid. You don't think like that when you're a kid. You don't think in terms of sexual identification, gender identification. You hardly even know what the stuff even means. You just kind of want to run around on a playground and have some fun. I was the ultimate tomboy when I was, I would probably say from 6 to 10. I was just like, I just wanted to hang out with the boys, just wanted to wear baggy clothes. And thank goodness that I grew up in the 90s, because my mother wasn't like, well, you're Michael. You're obviously Michael. You know what I mean? They were just like, you're Candace going through a tomboy phase. And then, when I got older, suddenly I thought those boys I was running around the playground with were attractive. So these kids are not even being allowed to grow up, and their parents are pigeonholing them into these decisions, which if you grow up and, allow that to happen, this is going to end up with depression, suicide. The rates are staggering for transgendered individuals who actually transition and commit suicide thereafter. There's a lot of transitioning regret, and it's because they don't have parents parenting, and that's sad.
Yeah. To your point about this not being an LGB thing, but a T thing, when you look at the numbers, the L lesbians are being basically erased in the younger generations as we see the trans numbers go up. And it's interesting you say as a tomboy, if you were a tomboy now with some of the modern parents, they'd say you were trans. And that's why it's this irony where actually the left has made gender a more rigid thing, because now it's actually, if you're a girl, you're not allowed to behave like a boy, because if you do, now you become a boy.
Right.
So for a long time, it seemed like they were saying, Well, just because let's open up, let's be more open-minded, and if you're a girl, doesn't mean you have to play with dolls. You can play with trucks too. I'm on board for that.
Mm-hmm.
But now they've kind of contradicted themselves, and they said, well, come to think of it, if you're a girl playing with the trucks, maybe you're actually a boy. So
right, yeah, they've made it more rigid, and that's what I say in terms of race too. These things that they focus on, they say that they're trying to make things better. They always worsen them. You know, that it wasn't an issue for girls to play with guys. If I was in the toy store and saw a boy's sign and a girl's sign, I don't even know if I was reading it at the time that I was going to Toys R Us, which is now extinct. But secondly, if I wanted to go into the boys aisle and grab something, I would have just done it. My parents would never been like, "What are you doing in the boys aisle?" I never felt traumatized that there were like, you know, they were filtering products. And by the way, guys they gravitate towards different things. My brother played with entirely different things. We wanted the Barbies. It wasn't because of a gender construct, you know. We wanted the Barbies. I wanted to take care. I wanted to pamper. I wanted a baby doll. Those maternal instincts happen at such a young age. My brother, he wanted video games. He wanted trucks. He wanted things that I just wouldn't have played with. But nothing was stopping us from playing with the other toy. It's certainly not our parents.
Yeah, that's my first kids were boy-girl twins, and you know, you bring them to the playroom, got all the toys laid out, and even at 2 years old, they tend to gravitate towards their gender-typical toys. But it's not like I'm standing there to my son, "Get your hands off that doll. That's trucks are for you, son."
Yeah.
Now, okay, we got to talk about your show. That's supposed to be the main topic here. We've gone off, and I'm not a very good interviewer. I've taken us on
it's fine.
a circuitous
it's fun.
path.
It's best when they're just natural, you know?
So your show is debuting soon. Can you tell us? Even here, it's been sort of like mysterious. What is the Candace show?
Yeah, very mysterious.
I heard there's going to be an audience. I heard these kind of things. So can you tell us about the show? Can you give us
a lot of rumors?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we kind of just wanted to create something that hasn't really been done before for conservatives. And the time is super opportune, right? You have minimally 80 million Americans who just feel like they're not being heard right now, and who feel like they're being castigated for their political views. And it also feels like we've been increasingly shut out of culture. Like, oh, we can't have, you know, conservatives aren't allowed to be funny. They're not allowed to have live audiences. This is not a thing that conservatives are allowed to do. So we are doing a live audience show, and it will be very much in the vein of a lot of the old school late night talk shows when they were actually fun, right? When they actually had a sense of humor and they weren't so polarizing, and done entirely at the expense of half of the country. And so I always say to people, I wanted to create something, and it's so funny to me to say this now, but when I was growing up, I loved Chelsea Lately. Before she went lefty, wacko, couldn't take a joke, and now she's taking Xanax to deal with the election results. She was funny. Once upon a time, Chelsea Handler was actually funny and irreverent and had a sense of humor and made fun of everyone. And it was a feel-good show. It had a panel. So there were elements that I really loved and missed about having a woman who could have a sense of humor and not take herself so seriously, first and foremost, and just kind of creating a show that does still also have a real purpose. We're not sitting around talking about celebrities like she was talking about, but we are talking about these sort of really important political issues that are getting lost, because a lot of the times, you know, the news cycle moves so quickly that it's almost, we're all ADD, right? 1 second you're trying to talk about this issue, and then they've kicked it and they're talking about this issue. And I really wanted to sort of get people focused on these issues like we just talked about in this show, to really understand what is happening in this country, how serious it is, but also to give them a message of hope. And that's through my monologue and my epilogue. What would you say at the end when you say something at the end? Epilogue, maybe?
Called epilogue, sure.
Yeah, but like the opposite of an epilogue is a prologue, and I wouldn't call the monologue the prologue. Well, I guess it's a monologue prologue. Yeah, and then it's a monologue epilogue.
I just call it the monologue at the end.
Yeah.
The simplest thing.
Yeah. Monologue at the end.
Yeah.
And sort of giving them a sense of hope and letting people know, okay, it does kind of feel like the world's on fire and we're just watching it burn. But there are some things to feel hopeful about. People are fighting back. People are winning. And to invite, you know, for the interview segments, Americans, you know, of course there will be some celebrities put onto the show as well, but also I'm inspired by a lot of Americans that are fighting back, students who are fighting back against the indoctrination that's happening at their schools, and it's going to be a really fun show.
That's bringing the hope into it is good, because and that'll be good to inject a little bit of sunlight here, because I'm just doom and gloom. That's my perspective, is we're all doomed.
Some people like to watch the world burn, right?
Yes.
That's your show.
So, but I think it's hard to inject sometimes actual hope in a way that's real and substantive and not superficial. So.
Right, and to inspire people, like I said, I was reading a story about these literal, I'm trying to get them on my show, but these Catholic teens who were going to school obviously at the time of George Floyd protesting, and when everyone just went super woke, and one of their classmates had gone back and found old pictures of them where the kid had acne. In one picture, he had an all-white face mask. Next picture, he had an all-green face mask with his two buddies. And they just said, that's blackface. Green mask, acne mask. He actually had acne. The school...
That is insane.
He got expelled. And they said, we know you didn't actually do this, but it's very important for us to send a political message right now in this time. Incredible.
Hang on, he got expelled.
He got expelled.
For
they said you either withdraw or we're going to expel you. And his parents withdrew and then lawyered up and are suing and are actually winning, right? And so that's kind of the message people need to hear. Because I always get these questions of like, what can I do? What can I do? Fight. You got to fight. This is not a time now to say, what can I do? Your parents, you got to fight for your students. You got to go in, you got to march into the doors. And if they do something crazy like that, well, it's an important message for us to send that you in green face is in fact not okay, because George Floyd died. And it's, what world are we living in? So kind of like those stories, talking to these teens, talking to these parents need to see that and say, wow, they won, and know that they can do that too. It's very easy. You don't need to always look to your political heroes and say, and figure out what you can do. It's going to start it's going to start at the ground level or it's not going to happen,
Well, we're all excited for the new show.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us, Candace.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy vibes. Who do we get them from? Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Yep, her and Prince Harry have landed a new podcast deal after parting ways with Spotify. And that is amazing because Spotify lost so much money on them. And you remember one of the executives came out and said they quite literally have no talent. But worse than that, they don't want to work. Never, ever in the history of the world has there been a couple that has grifted as hard and as successfully as they have, right? You just grifted off of your family, haven't really done anything since. You keep getting awards, you keep getting these deals. I don't understand it. And the brand that they keep going into is this idea that Meghan is a feminist. She's a true feminist, and that's why she's being awarded by Gloria Steinem. She's just a brave woman. And yeah, I don't understand why her podcast, her original one, didn't take off. I've listened to it. I definitely would want to listen to this every single day of my life if there were more episodes. Let's just take it back to her old podcast that was on Spotify called Archetypes.
When I was 14, I planned my wedding. Not my actual wedding. That would have been a bit harder to imagine. This wedding was an assignment for my Religion 2 class in Catholic school. At no point could you say, nope, my dream for the future is to be single. The message, even at my feminist all-girls school, was as traditional as it gets. First comes love, then comes marriage.
It was stunning, brave. I don't know what that podcast executive was talking about. She's amazing. I love her. Which is why it makes perfect sense that another company has approached her. She has landed a new deal. This is obviously less than a year after Spotify said, no, we're good. You are losing us money. Well, Spotify, that's kind of your fault because it's pretty obvious that these two are only good at selling their family throwing their family under the bus. And Meghan has released a statement about this new partnership. It is with Lemonada, and they're going to stream Archetypes. Yeah. They're going to handle all of the ad sales and the distribution. And remember, she had tons of people on to talk about this feminism. She had Mariah Carey, Mindy Kaling, and now they're going to take this on. Meghan released this statement. I am proud to now be able to share that I am joining the brilliant team at Lemonada to continue my love of podcasting. Being able to support a female-founded company with a roster of thought-provoking and highly entertaining podcasts is a fantastic way to kick off 2024. Our plan to re-release Archetypes so that more people can now have access to it, as well as launching a dynamic new podcast, are well in the works. I'm so eager to be able to share it soon, and I'm overjoyed to be joining the Lemonada family. Yes, she's not even going to do any work in the beginning. They're just going to re-release what she already did, and then I'm sure she's eager to do more, but the financial terms of the deal were obviously not disclosed. Lemonada probably just wants to get their name on the map. They're taking a chance, and I'm going to guess it's not going to pan out that well. because people want to listen to something that sounds real. They don't want to be lectured about feminism. They don't want to be lectured about what they're doing wrong. They don't want to be told the patriarchy is all around them. And, oh, yes, remember when you were in high school and people were like, get married? Yeah, I do remember. It's an aspirational goal. Yes, getting married and starting a family is aspirational. Stop trying to convince us to do the opposite when you did exactly that. You got married, found yourself a prince, and pimped your way into Hollywood, which is where you always wanted to be. But let me stop. We'll cover this, obviously, extensively when her new podcast, that she's probably not going to do, it hits the market. So I'm really proud of Americans. It seems like a lot of us are waking up to the understanding that our mainstream media is just possessed with propaganda. They're just state media. That's the way to think of it. This is the CIA elects them into these positions of power behind the scenes, and their job is to condition the way that we as Americans think. And this clip, by the way, which is making the rounds, I have to show you what I'm speaking about. It is just so gross in terms of the adoration, the fawning over Zelensky, when quite literally they were just trying to convince us to be totally chill with getting to work and sending more and more billions, trying to make you think he was a hero fighting for democracy. Yeah, this is CNN's Erin Burnett. She has an opportunity to sit down with Zelensky and ask him questions. And here's what she was concerned with. Take a listen.
As a human being, so many people look up to you. They rely on you. No one can imagine how hard that is. Do you do anything for yourself? Are you ever able to take a minute to read or to listen to music or something to sort of give yourself that a moment?
I have such moments, important, to be in silence, to be alone. Alone, how can I be alone? Alone, I can be with music.
What music do you like?
Oh, I like AC/DC and Ukrainian music. Yeah. Of course, I like Ukrainian music a lot because Ukrainian, that's native language. That's why you understand not only music, you understand the words and etc. AC/DC, I don't understand all the words because of. But
you like the music.
It's just incredible. It's like she's quite literally trying to date him. She's. So many people rely on you. Like, what kind of music do you listen to? And how do you find time for you? Could you imagine if when Tucker was interviewing Putin, he asked any of those questions? Like, so many people rely on you, Mr. Putin. What kind of music do you listen to? It's just such a joke, and it's so obvious. And to be clear, that interview was from last year, July 2023. But I'm showing it to you now because it seems that since then, there has been this mass awakening. There's a lot of corruption happening in Ukraine, and those of us who have had the courage to talk about it and expose it, and people say, why is it relevant? Because we're sending you money. I'm already aware that Putin is corrupt. We're not sending him billions of dollars, all right? There is, as I believe it, in the way that I see it, a mass execution of Christians that are happening in Ukraine. Christians should be upset about this. We should be asking questions. It seems like they're just clearing out the region under the guise of fighting an unwinnable war with Russia. There is something that I have said is giving me Bolshevik vibes. Go back and watch our episode talking about what the Bolshevik Revolution was. There's something about Zelensky that is not sitting right with me because we control him. And it seems to me that there is an ethnic cleansing that has taken place. But lo and behold, you guys, a network that claims to be independent, which obviously it's not independent. If you're allowed to be in Ukraine and be reporting any types of news, it's because you are operated by the state. They're shutting down churches. Zelensky has put his opponents in house arrest, right? Saying, you're not even going to compete with me. He suspended election. It's giving dictator. It's giving psychopath. We should not be funding this psychopath. But Vox, claiming to be completely independent, decided to release what is being referred to as a network of pro-Russian, disinformation in the West. And they've released 26 individuals. It's really stunning. Just to give you some honorable mentions here, Tucker Carlson, of course, because he went over and talked to Putin. That means automatically he's engaged in disinformation because you should not be allowed to hear from the other person in this war. You're not smart enough, ladies and gentlemen. Only Erin Burnett is smart enough to interpret the news for you. John Mearsheimer, shocking that he's made that list. You've got Jimmy Dore on this list. You've got Russell Brand on this list, which is just so confusing to me. Like, Russell Brand is so much peace and love. He's so happy, but they put him on this list because basically, if you are not accepting their narrative, then you should be on the list, which is why I am offended. I'm offended. I said on this show, right when the war broke out, that if there was one person that I could punch in the face and get away with, it would be President Zelensky. And I have held to that firmly. They circulated that clip. They wrote news articles. Candace says she would punch Zelensky in the face. Yeah, right. I just right in the face a couple of times, jab them. That's what I would do. And yet they did not put me on this list. Ridiculous, really, because these obviously are the individuals that are engaged in disinformation. Now, lo and behold, if you look at the news today, it's wall-to-wall coverage about the fact that somebody that Putin imprisoned, his rival, Alexei Navalny, you may have heard about him. There were the allegations that he was poisoned when he was in the UK by the honchos of Vladimir Putin, and then they put him in prison up in Siberia, and it has been reported that he has died, that he collapsed while he was walking. And so there is obviously a lot of suspicion that this was something that was done that was barbaric and awful, and that they did this intentionally to kill him as a rival for speaking out against Vladimir Putin, which is not allowed in these sorts of regimes. And of course, that is awful and that is wrong and it deserves coverage. And we should be covering the corruption of Zelensky with just as much vigor. And they don't do that, right? They didn't even cover the fact that an American journalist was killed in the exact same fashion, put into a prison because he criticized, while he was in Ukraine, he criticized Zelensky and the Biden regime. And what did they do? They put him into prison and then he died mysteriously. Just weeks after his dad went on Tucker Carlson and said, they are going to kill my son, please help. The mainstream media didn't cover this. They didn't care. Nope, they don't care because their narrative is to say that everything Zelensky does is good. Two things can be true at once. I know why people think it's always got to be a villain and a hero story. There can be multiple villains, but we are only funding one of those villains. And he is mass murdering Christians, taking them off of the street and sending them to the front lines to die in a war that he cannot win, okay? And he is also, as I have said, I think, conditioning us to accept an ethnic cleansing in that region. President Zelensky is a monster. That is my point, okay? It doesn't mean that Vladimir Putin is good. Two things can be true at once. Hey guys, if you like this video, you will definitely like the full episode even better. You can find it by clicking right here.